So today we've been looking at how the crisis and the new lockdown is going to be affecting different parts of our society. We've spoken to business, we've been talking about education. Now let's talk about an area which has felt the brunt of this crisis more than most, and that is, of course, care, social care. Dr. Ben Maruthappu is Chief Executive of CIRA, the UK's largest home care provider. Is also a former senior advisor to the NHS England Chief, Sir Simon Stevens. Evening to you, Dr. Maruthappu.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time. Just on care homes, we've seen that was a vulnerable area at the height of the crisis before now. In many ways, it still is, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. The social care sector is under tremendous pressure, arguably more pressure than it's ever faced before. It is vulnerable. And of course, this is after years of challenged funding amounts from local authorities and at a national level for social care, and an infrastructure and system that's quite outdated. And this means going into the pandemic, the social care sector was arguably the most exposed to the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to the fact that social care tends to focus on looking after older people who are the most vulnerable to COVID-19 as a virus. It's most damaging to older people, and in turn, the majority of deaths in the UK and internationally have occurred in older people. Yeah. So social care really has had a very tough time. And yes, the NHS is under tremendous pressure, but I would say that social care is under equal, if not even more pressure than the health service.
And we heard from the Prime Minister just an hour and a half or so ago telling us that nearly a quarter of those over 80 had been given vaccination. But for care homes, it is still a challenge, a logistical challenge, and a challenge in other ways to get the vaccine deployed in a way that we need it to be.
It is. And for example, we look after around 10,000 people on any given day in their own homes. So we are a home care provider. But of that, less than 50 of those individuals have received vaccinations thus far. So clearly, much more needs to happen in terms of scaling up the vaccination effort across the country if the government is to meet its ambition of vaccinating all people above the age of 70 by mid-February. And this may mean we have to go further in terms of even where we do vaccinate people. Maybe we need to be vaccinating people in care homes themselves and even in their own homes if they're extremely vulnerable and they are concerned or anxious about going to vaccination centres themselves. I think we have to pull out all the stops, because this is arguably the toughest phase and part of the pandemic that we've been in so far.
Yeah, the lockdown, the new lockdown, that's going to make this whole task so much more difficult, isn't it? Just set out for us why that might be.
Logistically, the vaccination program is already a difficult feat under tremendous time pressure. Having a national lockdown where people are, of course, well, they're going to be staying in their own homes. They're going to be hopefully abiding by the respective restrictions and measures and guidance. But on the flip side, it can make logistics much more difficult to manage. It can make people less inclined to even go to vaccinations after they've been invited to do so. And the other element we need to be wary of is older people in particular are vulnerable to suffer from isolation and loneliness. And we saw in the first lockdown that being a material challenge that older people across the country faced. And so it's very important that we think carefully at a local and national level about how we can support older people during this high pressure, vulnerable and potentially anxious time. And this may mean even providing them with support with getting their regular household supplies and even groceries, in addition to perhaps safety check-ins by carers or by